I did not say a word. I did not cry. I just smiled, got back in my car, and drove the 45 minutes home in silence. That was a Thursday evening in early April. My daughter's 40th birthday was the following Saturday. I had known about it for weeks. Not because she told me, but because my grandson called me by accident while trying to reach his mum, and I heard him in the background asking if Grandpa was coming to the party. She never called to invite me. I told myself maybe she forgot. Maybe she was busy. My daughter works in real estate, always juggling 3 things at once. I gave her the benefit of the doubt the way I always had, the way her mother taught me to before her mother passed 4 years ago. So I drove to her house that Thursday. I figured I'd stop by, see her, bring her the birthday card I'd already bought. Nothing fancy, just a card with a check inside, the way I'd done every year since she turned 18. This year, I'd written the check for $500, more than I should have, probably, given that I'm retired now and watching my savings the way a man watches a gas gauge on a long highway. Her car was in the driveway. Her husband's truck was there too. I knocked. She answered the door in a bathrobe, phone pressed to her ear, and when she saw me, she didn't smile. She held up one finger, the wait finger, and kept talking into the phone for another full minute while I stood on the porch like a delivery man who had the wrong address. When she finally hung up, she said, "Dad, I didn't know you were coming. I told her I was in the neighborhood. I told her I wanted to give her something before the weekend." She said, "What weekend?" I looked at her for a moment. "Your birthday, sweetheart." She shifted her weight, looked past me toward the street. "Dad, we're actually doing a small thing Saturday. Just friends. It's not really a family thing. Just friends. Not really a family thing." I'd been paying the rent on that house for 2 years. Not the mortgage. She and my son-in-law had done a lease-to-own arrangement with a property management company, and 18 months ago they'd come to me because they were short. They needed help with the monthly payment, $1,200 a month, just until we get back on our feet, she said. My son-in-law had changed jobs twice in 3 years, and my daughter's commission income runs hot and cold depending on the market. I understood. I didn't hesitate. I set up an automatic transfer from my account to hers, first of every month, $1,200. I never asked for it back. I never even mentioned it. I also paid for my grandson's after-school program, $420 a month. He's 9 years old and sharp as a tack, and the program does robotics and coding, and I wanted him in it because his father thinks video games are education enough. I paid without saying a word to anyone except my daughter, and she thanked me once and never mentioned it again. And there I was, standing on my own daughter's porch, being told her 40th birthday party wasn't a family thing. I handed her the card anyway. She took it without looking at it. I drove home. I did not argue. I did not beg. I sat in my kitchen for a long time after I got back. I made a cup of coffee I didn't drink. I looked out the window at the backyard, at the garden her mother planted the year before she got sick. The roses were starting to come up. Her mother would have known exactly what to say in that moment. She always did, but her mother wasn't here, and I was 63 years old, sitting alone in a quiet house, trying to understand what I'd done wrong. I hadn't done anything wrong. That was the part I kept coming back to. I replayed the last year, 2 years, 5 years. I had shown up. Every time she called, I picked up the phone. When my son-in-law lost his second job and my daughter cried on the phone for 40 minutes, I listened to every word. When my grandson had a school play, I drove 45 minutes each way to sit in a gymnasium and watch him pretend to be a talking tree. I did all of it. I never complained. I never made them feel like they owed me anything because I didn't want them to feel that way. And she threw a 40th birthday party and did not invite me. I went to bed at 9 o'clock that night and stared at the ceiling. By the time Friday morning came, something in me had gone quiet. Not angry quiet, not hurt quiet, just decided. I opened my banking app. I looked at the automatic transfer set up for the first of the month. $1,200. 2 weeks away. I thought about it for a long time. I thought about her voice on the porch, the way she'd looked past me at the street. Just friends. Not really a family thing. I cancelled the transfer. Then I looked at the payment I had set up for my grandson's after-school program. I stared at it for a full minute. This one was harder. My grandson hadn't done anything. He was 9. None of this was his fault. But I thought his parents are capable adults. His father works. His mother sells houses. They can figure out the after-school program. They chose to lean on me because I let them. Because I made it easy. Because I never said a word. I paused the payment. Not cancelled, paused. I told myself I'd reassess in 30 days. Then I looked at the additional credit card I'd added my daughter as an authorized user on 3 years ago, when her own credit took a hit after a dispute with a contractor. I'd forgotten I still had her on it. She used it occasionally. I could see the charges. A grocery run here, a tank of gas there. Nothing outrageous, but it was my account, my credit, my name. I removed her from the account. I did all 3 things before my second cup of coffee. I put the phone down on the kitchen table and looked out at the roses again. I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, exactly. More like stillness. The kind of stillness you feel after you've made a decision you should have made a long time ago. Saturday came. I spent the morning pulling weeds in the garden. I had lunch by myself, a turkey sandwich and some iced tea, sitting on the back porch. In the afternoon, I drove to the hardware store and picked up some stakes for the tomato plants I'd been meaning to put in. I came home. I watched the evening news. I went to bed early. My daughter had her party. I know what happened at that party because my grandson called me Sunday morning. He's 9, and he doesn't know how to pretend things are fine when they're not. He called from his little tablet, and his face on the screen was serious in the way kids' faces get when they've overheard things they weren't supposed to hear. "Grandpa," he said, "Mom and Dad are really upset." I asked him if he was okay. He said he was okay. He said he was just at home watching TV. I told him that was fine, that he didn't need to worry about grown-up things, and that I loved him. After we hung up, I sat for a while. Then my daughter called. She didn't say hello. She said, "Dad, what did you do?" I told her I didn't know what she meant. She said the money hadn't come in. She said she and my son-in-law had gone out to dinner Friday night to celebrate early, just the 2 of them, and his card had been declined, and she'd reached for the card she used for small things, and it didn't work either, and she'd had to call her friend to come pay for their dinner. I told her that card was no longer active. I told her I'd made some adjustments to my accounts. She went quiet. "What adjustments?" she said. I told her, very calmly, that I had paused the monthly transfer and removed her from my credit account. The quiet on the other end of the phone lasted long enough that I checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Then she said, "Dad, we count on that money." "I know," I said. "We have rent coming up." "I know," I said. "Why would you do this?" I told her I'd stopped by her house Thursday evening. I reminded her about the card I'd handed her, the one she'd taken without looking at. I told her what she'd said about the party. Just friends. Not really a family thing. She said, "Dad, it was just a birthday dinner. It wasn't a big deal." I said, "You're right. It wasn't a big deal. So this shouldn't be a big deal either." She started to say something else, and I told her I loved her, and I said goodbye, and I ended the call. The phone rang 11 more times that afternoon. 8 from my daughter, 3 from my son-in-law. I let them all go to voicemail. My son-in-law's messages were something else. The first one was calm, asking me to call him back, saying he wanted to talk this through like adults. The second one, left about 40 minutes later, was less calm. He said he didn't know what my daughter had done to upset me, but that using money to punish people wasn't right. The third message he left that evening started with, "Look, I don't know what your problem is," and I stopped listening after that. My daughter left a voicemail that was mostly crying. She said she was sorry I felt left out. She said the party was small. It wasn't a reflection of how she felt about me. She just wanted one night with her friends where she wasn't someone's daughter or someone's wife, just herself. I understood that more than she knew. I listened to that message 3 times. I understood wanting to be just yourself for one night. I had felt that way many times in the past 4 years, since her mother died and I became the background figure in everyone else's life. The wallet, the babysitter, the man who shows up when called and disappears when dismissed. I understood wanting to be seen as something other than what you are to other people, but she had never once thought to extend me that same courtesy. She had never once asked who I was outside of being her father. She called me when she needed money, when she needed someone to watch my grandson, when her husband had upset her and she needed to vent for 45 minutes. She did not call me on Sundays just to talk. She did not invite me to things. She did not notice that I spend every holiday alone now, in a house that used to hold a family. I did not call her back that evening. Tuesday morning she showed up at my door. She looked tired. She'd put her hair up the way she does when she's been crying and doesn't want it to show. She was wearing the jacket she'd had since college, dark blue, a little too big, and she looked, for just a moment, like the kid I used to drive to soccer practice. I let her in. I made coffee. She sat at the kitchen table and looked at her hands. She said, "I should have invited you." I poured the coffee and set her mug in front of her and sat down across from her. She said, "I don't know why I didn't. I think I stopped thinking about you as someone who needed to be included, and that's a terrible thing to realize about yourself." I asked her when she'd started thinking of me that way. She thought about it for a moment. She said, "After Mum died, I think. You kept going. You kept helping. You never asked for anything. And I think I started treating you like you didn't need anything, like you were just there, like a constant." I told her that was not a compliment. She said, "I know." We sat with that for a while. I told her I wasn't trying to punish her. I told her I wasn't a cruel man, and I didn't want to be. But I told her I had been invisible in my own family for 4 years, and that the party was just the moment I finally admitted it to myself. I told her I was 63 years old, and I was tired of being a constant. I wanted to be a person. She started to cry. I reached across the table and put my hand on her hand, the way her mother used to do, and I waited. When she'd gotten herself together, she asked me what I needed. I told her I needed to be included. I told her I needed to be included. I told her I needed a phone call on a Sunday that wasn't about money or logistics. I needed to be invited to things, not because I was useful, but because I was her father and she was my daughter, and we were the only immediate family either of us had left. I told her that the money, all of it, had never been about obligation. It had come from love. But love has to go both directions, or eventually the person giving it runs dry. She nodded. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of that old blue jacket. She said, "Are you going to keep the payments cancelled?" I told her we'd figure that out together. I told her the after-school program was important to me, and I wanted to keep that going, because that was about her son, not about our argument. I told her the monthly transfer was something we needed to talk about differently, openly, like adults, not like she was quietly accepting a handout from someone she decided didn't need to be seen. She said that was fair. We talked for almost 2 hours. I told her things I hadn't said since her mother died. She told me things I think she'd been carrying for years without knowing how to say them. We didn't resolve everything. We weren't going to resolve everything in one Tuesday morning over coffee, but when she stood up to leave, she hugged me in the doorway, a real hug, the kind that lasts more than 2 seconds, and she said, "I love you, Dad. I'm sorry." I told her I loved her too. After she drove away, I stood on the porch for a while looking at the yard, at the roses her mother had planted. They were coming in well, a little wild, but well. I went inside and put the kettle on. I picked up my phone and looked at the banking app. I looked at the paused transfer. I looked at the credit account. I sat down at the kitchen table with my tea and I thought about all of it. Then I reinstated the after-school payment. My grandson had robotics on Wednesday, and I wasn't going to let a grown-up argument get in the way of that kid and his future. The monthly transfer I left paused, not cancelled. Just paused. We were going to talk about it like adults, openly, the way I should have insisted on 2 years ago instead of just quietly absorbing the expense and hoping it made me feel less alone. It had not made me feel less alone. Nothing makes you feel less alone except being seen by the people who are supposed to see you. I know that now. At 63, after 4 years of silence and showing up and never asking for anything, I finally know that giving without ever asking to be acknowledged is not generosity. It is disappearing on purpose, and I was tired of disappearing. I am still her father. I am still his grandfather. I am still the man who will drive 45 minutes to sit in a gymnasium and watch a 9-year-old pretend to be a talking tree. But I am also a person, and I am done being a constant. I kept thinking about that rose garden after she left. Her mother planted it the year before she got sick. Just a patch of dirt and bare stems at first. Nothing that looked like it would survive. But she tended it. Every morning, before coffee, before anything else. She never made a big deal of it. She just showed up. That's what I had been doing for 4 years. Showing up. Quietly, without asking for acknowledgement, without keeping score. I thought that was what love looked like. And it is, but I had confused love with disappearing. I had made myself so easy to overlook that my own daughter stopped seeing me altogether. That's not love. That's erasure. And I had done it to myself, one silent gesture at a time. There's something I've learned the hard way about the way actions settle into consequences, not in a mystical sense, just the plain, honest mechanics of how people treat each other over time. When you never speak up, people assume there is nothing to say. When you never ask for anything, people assume you need nothing. When you absorb every cost without comment, people stop noticing the cost. My daughter didn't become careless overnight. She became careless gradually, the way a river cuts stone, not through force but through repetition. And I had let her, because I thought being needed was the same as being loved. It isn't. I know that now. What I did when I cancelled that transfer wasn't cruelty. I want to be clear about that to myself as much as anyone. It wasn't revenge. It was the first honest thing I had done in years. It was me finally saying I have a limit. I am a person, not a system. And a man who knows his own limits, who can look at a situation clearly and act on what he sees without flinching. That takes something. It takes the willingness to be honest, even when honesty is uncomfortable. It takes the discipline to sit with a hard decision and not walk it back because someone cried on the phone. My daughter is not a bad person. She is a person who had never been asked to see me. That Tuesday morning, when she sat at my kitchen table in that old blue jacket and said, "I stopped thinking of you as someone who needed to be included," that was one of the most honest things she has ever said to me. And honesty like that, the kind that costs you something, is its own kind of strength. I was proud of her for it, even as it stung. We didn't fix everything in one morning. We won't. But we started, and starting required both of us to be willing to look at things as they actually were, not as we wished they were. That's harder than it sounds. Most people would rather keep the peace than speak the truth. I had kept the peace for 4 years and nearly lost myself in the process. My grandson has robotics on Wednesdays. I reinstated that payment the same day. He didn't do anything wrong, and his future doesn't belong to an argument between grown-ups. That boy is going to need every advantage he can get, and I intend to be around long enough to see what he builds. The roses are coming in well this spring, a little wild, but they always come back.